over the last...
Yeah, so I feel like because of the federal debt government, the government is going to try to take back with, trying to find other sources of how they can make more revenue. And one of them, it is going to be the one I have been telling you about, investing big in technology. So that's the most important factor. They've been investing in technology, but the last 48 days, 48 days, 1 trillion is a lot of money, 21 billion per day. They're trying to set this back, of course, by firing people. But the other one is this big thing that, they're going to try to get XRP partnerships and stuff like that.
48 days, the U.S. federal debt has surged by over $1 trillion to over $21 billion per day. It's the last 48 days, okay? That is an insane number to look at. Since August 11th, the U.S. has added over $200 billion in debt. Why is U.S. government spending running at a World War II level?
I mean, yeah, if Trump went on VLFI coin, which is like its own stable coin, he has invested in crypto, I don't feel like crypto is gone. Someone said XRP is annoying. It's been years and years of waiting and waiting. That's because XRP needs years and years of development, really. When you look at it, these type of developments take years of development. That's why no other company has done it yet. That's why they're in testing phases. Making a whole technology is super hard.
In a strong economy? Well, that's a fantastic question. When we look at this chart right here, this is World War II spending. Of course, federal spending went through the roof at this time. This is today.
That's true, but you also have to consider there is more money coming in now. Like, I feel like this type of money, U.S. government expenditures right now, of course, the government is spending a lot of money. That's very true. But there's also more money in circulation and in the world, so I kind of expect that to happen. It's easier for the U.S. government to reinvest the money. So it's much easier to reinvest the money than like 2009 to the 20th century.
2025. This is where we're at pretty much. And it's continuously going up. You can see we hit records during this era right here, the COVID.
Now, this is what a lot of people don't realize. When the U.S. government spends money, like, for example, defense budgets, that literally creates economy. That gives people jobs.
Era. And it's looking like we're going to be on pace to get back there. The U.S. is now spending 44% of GDP per year, which is in line with both WW2 and the 2008 levels, of course, when we had that massive debt bubble. Meanwhile, the Fed is calling for a soft landing, and the U.S. is touting a strong economy, which might seem kind of strange. Just 2 weeks ago, 37 trillion in debt was a headline. Now we are 20% closer to 38 trillion. Strange. We're adding...
So yeah, while their debt is bigger, there's also more money in the world. I'm not sure if 1 trillion, but this is something they're trying to prevent.
Just a month and a half later, another $1 trillion in debt. We are now 10 months into fiscal year 2025, and the U.S. deficit is up 1.63 trillion. This is 109 billion above levels seen in fiscal year 2024, and it's only getting worse. We are on track to run 2 trillion plus deficits as debt rises along with interest rates. Just look at July. In July 2025 alone, the U.S. posted a $291 billion deficit. This is the second largest deficit for any July on record. The deficit is now up 7.4% year over year to 1.63 trillion, putting this year on track for the third largest deficit ever seen in history. Yet the U.S. keeps spending away. And so the situation that we're
I feel like the U.S. government is spending right now, again, it's not really spending, it's reinvesting. It's reinvesting in defense budgets, it's reinvesting in technology, it's reinvesting even if they work with XRP and want a project, that's going to cost them money. But they know they can get that money back. Of course, the U.S. government, as long as it's profitable, that's the thing. It's never going to be, a big problem for them. But the deficit is getting bigger.
Finding ourselves in is really simple when you break it down. The U.S. spending is completely out of control. The spending is only going up from here. The money printer is about to go back on, and currency is about to be devalued even further. And
that's why a lot of people started buying crypto because, again, not financial advice, but XRP has grown up 600% while probably lost like 5% of value or 10% the dollar in the last few months.
Comes at a time where companies are actually seeing record levels of profits. Not the small guys, the big guys. The big guys are making more money. The small businesses are not really making much more at all. They're just kind of keeping up with inflation. We'll get into that in just 1 second and what that means for XRP. But I also want to cover the fact that the public confidence in the Fed chair is also near record lows. And this is showing the general sentiment across America and the rest of the world. Only 37% of US adults say they have a great deal or a fair amount of confidence that the Fed chair will do the right thing for the economy. That's a very small amount. For Powell, now in his second term as chair, this is the second worst reading. By comparison, confidence peaked at 58% in 2020. In this century, the only other time confidence was this low was during Janet Yellen's term in 2014. The Fed is facing a crisis in confidence as well.
I mean, this is not a big problem because Jerome Powell is set to retire, I think, like May 2025, and that's because he didn't do rate cuts. The reason why he didn't do rate cuts is literally to not create a recession. You know, because if there was a bad type of news, this could create basically a long year recession and the bull market would be canceled. So yeah, people are going to be probably, this confidence is probably going to be returning once Jerome Powell confirms the rate cuts that people have been waiting for, that, you know, Trump has been calling for.
And this is precisely why Fed Chair Powell has caved. Because systematically, every single one of his governors on the Federal Reserve are being removed and replaced with people that are pro rate cuts, and he's not really going to be left with any choice in the matter.
I mean, it's a lot of pressure for him as well. You know, he wants to make the right decision
come next month or the month after that. So it's looking like Fed Chair is going to start cutting rates, but this once again begs the question, what's going to happen with the U.S. debt? If he cuts rates and the money printing continues, inflation continues, if government spending continues at these rates as well, the debt's going to continue to grow at these levels. The government's going to have to stop spending anywhere near the amount it is right now in order for inflation, all these other things to get in check. But there's no signs of them doing so. They're signing these massive spending bills into law, and they're just...
Isn't that they are trying to prevent that already, like doing rate cuts, increasing tax, things like that. But yeah, obviously it's a very big problem because this can happen, but it's not like if the thing I'm wondering is US could have repaid the 36 trillion or could never repay that. So if it is a problem now, wasn't it a problem before when they were like 30 trillion in debt? It was a problem, but it was not that like a game changer problem to change the bull markets.
You know, going at it. That's just the way that it's going. But during this period of time, there's also something that's really interesting that's happening. And it also gives all of us the ability to actually get out of this scot-free and be okay, which is absolutely incredible. Earnings of the Magnificent Seven companies have surged over 145% since ChatGPT was introduced in November of 2022.
That's what I'm telling you. Technology and AI is going to be big. You know, anything development, anything good for society, like XRP, those are the biggest gainers right now. Done are the times where meme coins and retail were strong. I really feel like that utilities were the biggest gainers, which you can see by the charts. And, you know, stuff like AI is just the icing on the top, you know, especially in a video like chips, anything that, you know, is going to help future.
What we're seeing is the top companies in the world have their earnings absolutely exploding following the introduction of AI. And so what this essentially tells us is integrating AI into your range of services and using this technology can save you an immense amount of money, skyrocket your earnings, grow the stock, and I think that's probably the main way that people are going to be escaping this inflation in the traditional finance world. But even better, I think that we should go to the root of this problem. Why is this an issue? Why do we have to go into stocks and real estate in order not to lose all of our money? Well, it's actually quite...
That's the thing, yeah. A lot of people don't know how to reinvest, and they lost tons, and they don't understand. You know, they still say, after 2 years, they still say, oh, I have $2,000, but now they suddenly see the prices are getting more expensive. which is a very big problem. Why do you have, what sort of investment is to put it into stocks? I feel like this was the last like 100 years anyway, but it should be that the dollar always stays strong. I feel like with more printing, that is never going to happen. That is like wishful thinking, right? People will always keep reinvesting their money, which is good for you because that means the stock markets will keep going up.
What is the issue? It's the Fed. It's the currency. It's the fiat currency. We need a new financial system. Imagine if every single company operated on a currency that didn't inflate. Well, then...
Now, that's what I don't agree with, because literally the thing with inflation is every single currency I know so far is printing money. And as long as you're printing money, that's how there's going to be like an inflation, right? And people need more money to get more jobs. That's how the government works. It's printing it, but if you made a limited supply, yeah, that's why people are calling, for stable coins to become a global currency. There you have another issue. The currency could still be deflated or inflated. You just wouldn't notice it.
Us as consumers would only invest into the companies that are actually producing something for society and, growing the economy in a way that's net beneficial for everyone. We're not just going to be throwing our money into all these ETFs in hopes that we don't lose our money. We're actually going to be making smarter decisions on what we want. And so this is why I very strongly believe that the entire stock market, everything should be run on cryptocurrency. And the way to escape inflation, the way to have smart money that's not going to absolutely explode is to look into cryptocurrency. That is my personal opinion, not financial.
I feel like this won't work, because even if you make a currency that doesn't have inflation or make a worldwide currency, it's going to be very hard for people to agree in it. And even if it's always at $1, think about it. If real estate rises, somebody is going to be willing to sell you the real estate for less. It just doesn't solve any problems. It's not deflation. It's literally that everything is getting so expensive. This is the bigger problem. It's a very deep problem, and it's not just simply doing a currency. But the XRP card was launched, and again, 3% in dining, 2% groceries, 1% everything else. Earn up to 4% back on every purchase with no annual fee. And I guess they get XRP. Again, I'm not sponsored by them, but cashback cards are a big thing in US, and it's nice to see XRP finally joining the army. I feel like it's a good marketing strategy from Gemini.
They just launched their XRP credit card. We're seeing XRP starting to get accepted internationally for different sorts of payments, whether that be with airfare, cross-border payment solutions, through universities that are using this technology and experimenting with it. It makes me extremely confident that the future is very close. And it makes me extremely excited for what that future is going to be. And so, yeah, I look at the technicals and, I do see some really interesting things here. One, we just touched the bottom resistance line, which is a very bullish sign that we're ready to move back up. Two, I look at the daily stochastic RSI chart. We see that we're trending in this median zone right here, which signals that we could potentially also be in a pretty good zone right now to look to potentially accumulate. And yeah, I'm just going to wait for us to touch.
That's what I'm bullish on. If the whales are buying, I'm not too scared about this. The whales buying is the big thing. Like, as long as the whales buy, I'm going to trust them, right? And whales are still buying, which is pretty good, and it's still positive news. So nothing needs to be changed. If it works, it doesn't need changing. Of course, yes, the debt is getting bad, but is it going to change the economy? No, because they don't have to repay this debt. If they didn't have to pay it to 30 trillion, why would they pay it to 37 trillion?